The movie starts with a woman being covered with a tight plastic cover and gasping for air. She bites off the cover over her mouth and gasps for air, and she frees herself from the covering, only to find out that she's in some kind of pod. And it seems as though it's a medical pod, as she's wearing a hospital gown with IV lines connected to her right hand. To make matters worse, she doesn't remember who she is or how she got there. And this is where M.I.L.O comes on and introduces itself as a medical interface liaison officer that is programmed to answer all her medical needs. It mentions medical cryogenics, so she thought that she was in a hospital, trapped inside with its oxygen levels falling rapidly. As she was yelling for help, she remembers that people in cryogenic pods are terminally sick, so she thought that she'd get informed of what the problem with her pod is and that somebody might come to help her. She asks M.I.L.O the AI for her identification, but all the information that it provided was less than helpful. She urges M.I.L.O to open the pod, but it refuses, saying that unlocking it is not recommended, even when she insisted, and it refuses to open the pod without an admin code, which she can't remember. Using M.I.L.O, she calls the police and tries to explain what happened, and the policeman who answered asks her a bunch of questions about the pod, and she tells him the pod's model and serial number, reading from the interior print. The policeman suddenly says that he would have to pass the call to his superior, and the call gets disconnected. Wait, hold on. Did you subscribe to our channel? Come on guys, you're here, you're watching the video, help us out by hitting the subscribe button, as it really helps out me and my team to make more videos for you guys. And now, let's get back to the recap. She then comes up with an idea. Since cryogenic units are medical labs, she asks M.I.L.O to do a DNA search of her tag, which is Omicron 267, and then finds a genetic match. M.I.L.O finds one match, and it's for a person called Elizabeth Hansen, Liz for short. The police call, and this time it's a captain from Science and Technology. She excitedly tells him her name, and he asks her to tell him everything she remembers, like suspect behavior of someone who might want to hurt her. He also tells her that the serial number that she told him to and the unit that belongs to it was actually destroyed 3 years prior. Listening to this, she asks M.I.L.O for a full medical checkup, only to find out that there's no illness or abnormality that's detected in her, and her life expectancy is actually 82 years. This really upsets her, and the captain tries to calm her down, and when she was calm, she tells him that she needs the admin codes to open the unit, but just then, the connection gets lost. Meanwhile, her oxygen level drops and reaches 29%, so the palliative care directive gets launched. The directive is basically about administering an injection so that she doesn't suffer when she dies from oxygen loss. She starts to fight it off, despite M.I.L.O warning her that any deliberate damage to the cryopod is considered a federal offense. After the 22%, Liz starts to look for clues with M.I.L.O's assistance, and she searches about her past with pictures and articles, and realizes that she's a cryogenic doctor who's married to a very handsome guy named Dr. Leo Ferguson. She then asks M.I.L.O to find the number of Dr. Leo and call him, and when the call is made, it's a woman who answers. Liz, in a panic, tells the woman that she's Leo's wife and demands to speak to him, but the woman on the other end seems confused and hangs up on her. With the oxygen level dropping even lower, Liz starts to look for a way to open the pod, and she hallucinates a lab rat up close. The rat startles her, and this spikes her blood pressure, which leads to M.I.L.O recommending a sedative. And after saying no, she says yes to the sedative and fights off the bot arm to seize the syringe and the needle, despite M.I.L.O's warning. With the needle, she tries to open the pod, and she receives an electric shock as M.I.L.O announces that attempts to breach the pod are controlled by electric shocks. When Liz almost nearly gives up, the captain calls back and tells her how they got the subpoena for the manufacturer company and how close she is to all of this being over. And meanwhile, she confesses how she's losing track of time. She starts to hallucinate, laying the ground for the captain to swoop in and tell her that she's experiencing a psychotic episode induced by the isolation, and he urges her to focus on her body since that's what she knows is real. And so, she inflicts pain on herself and triggers her memories, and the captain tells her that she was active on social media a few days ago and that nobody reported her missing. To make her suspicion peak, some voice Liz keeps whispering on the other side, as if the captain was conspiring against her with someone else. Despite her telling him that she and Leo were trying to have kids, he tells her that she was never married according to the information that they have on her, so she commands M.I.L.O to search for Dr. Leo Ferguson so that she gets proof of the pictures that she saw earlier. But M.I.L.O finds nothing, leaving Liz confused and frustrated, and she tells M.I.L.O to search for Dr. Elizabeth Hansen at the Science and Technology Awards, hoping to find the picture of her standing besides her husband. She becomes even more confused and yet suspicious when she sees herself standing all alone at the award. And looking to get something out of him, she tells him that she even called Leo earlier and that some woman answered. But he dismisses it all, saying that the woman isn't real and so isn't Leo, and that all of this is just her mind playing tricks on her. And instead, he starts to tell her how she used to play basketball at college, and how she has a doctorate in bioengineering, and how she had gotten many grants and awards, and how she was born in Stockholm, and that her single mom brought her there at the age of 6. She remembers her mom and tells him that her name is Alice, but he corrects her by saying that it's actually Isabel. He continues the story and tells her that she went to Oxford after medical school in Paris, to which she replies that that's where she met Leo. M.I.L.O interrupts them, announcing that the oxygen level is at 15%, and with time running out, Liz starts to lose it and she snaps at the captain. And to add to her anxiety, she hears that whispered voice again on the other line, and she orders M.I.L.O to disconnect the call. She suspects that they're hiding something from her and keeps rejecting the calls that come after that. She tells M.I.L.O to play the last call with the volume amped up, and she hears the whisper saying, "Tell her she's hearing things," confirming her suspicion that the captain is actually trying to make her feel like she's crazy when what she was experiencing was actually real. So she keeps rejecting incoming calls for a while, and then she decides to answer it, and some woman's voice speaks to her. The voice sounded urgent, and the woman calls her Liz. Liz asks how she knows her name, and the woman explains that she identified her the moment she heard her voice, because she called earlier looking for Leo. And Liz tells her that she wants to speak to Leo, and the woman reluctantly tells her that Leo's dead. But hearing this, Liz refuses to believe the woman and instructs M.I.L.O to end the call. The woman calls again and gives Liz the admin code to stop Liz from disconnecting the call. And even though she gave Liz the admin code, she tells her not to use it, but Liz, having lost trust in everyone, immediately uses the code and starts the initiation process. But Liz stops just before opening the pod when the woman shouts that she'll die if she opens it. As proof, she guides Liz to switch the centrifuge off, and as soon as it's switched to 0, M.I.L.O announces turning off microthrusters, and Liz begins floating as if there's no gravity. She finds out that she's almost 43,000 miles away from Earth, and she switches the microthrusters back on, as weightlessness can be bad for bioforms. She also finds out that she's been placed under hypersleep and is part of a mission by the Ministry of Defense to colonize a planet orbiting around Wolf 10-61, 14 light years away from Earth. The woman explains that even if she's incapable of bringing Liz home, she may be able to put her back to hypersleep again. She reveals that the mission is confidential, and because the Ministry got involved as soon as the police started looking for information about her, the captain had no choice but to lie. And since she could lead to the exposure of certain information by speaking to the wrong person and causing general panic and chaos, she's actually considered a threat. M.I.L.O then announces the oxygen levels again and wakes her up, and he says that there's a problem with processor 3-54, and it's actually overheating due to loss of oxygen reserves, and this processor monitors and stimulates the subject's cerebral activity to avoid brain damage. But when she tries to divert resources to that specific feature, the capacity couldn't handle it and fails. While they were planning to deactivate systems that don't have priority, the authorities caught up to the woman, and before getting disconnected, the woman instructs Liz to find a way to install a shunt and return to hypersleep before the oxygen hits 2% so that she'll have enough when she gets to her destination. The woman also reminds Liz to find what triggers her memories and find Leo. The connection is lost after the police arrest the woman, leaving Liz to contemplate the words of what the woman said and how she's now gonna have to manage to find Leo alone. She almost gave up, but she instructs M.I.L.O to search for Alice Hansen in Paris and to call her, and her goodbye call gets disconnected as the space pod goes out of reach. M.I.L.O tells her that the oxygen level is at 6%, and after it runs out, she's gonna live for about 3 agonizing minutes of gasping for air, and then she asks how long she'll live during decompression in outer space, just to weigh her options on which is the best way to die. And as time passes, with the oxygen level dropping alarmingly at 5%, she gives up and prepares to die, initiating the unlocking protocol. But as M.I.L.O counts down, she remembers something and asks M.I.L.O to interrupt the process. She learned that there are actually 10,000 Omicron units located within the vicinity, and most of them are fully operational, but 433 of them are lost. And as the oxygen level keeps dropping, she learns that she's the only bioform that's actually awake. She struggles to remember Leo's ID, but she does, and M.I.L.O tells her that his pod is actually operational, and she's happy to find out that he's not among the 433 that died. As happy and hopeful as she is, she notices that something's off. Leo's scar on his forehead that she remembered so vividly now doesn't seem to exist. She asks M.I.L.O to do another search for Elizabeth Hansen and show her the videos, and a video titled Memory Transfer catches her eye and plays it, and the video is presented by an elderly woman. The woman talks about how countless attempts have been made to achieve memory transfer, and how the scientific community has abandoned the pursuit of memory transfer as impossible until she devised an audacious experiment involving personality transfer in rats. She further explains how emotions are encoded as muscular memory, and how the research team recorded and archived these emotion waves by stimulating the original muscles to evoke memories, making them possible of transforming data into experience. M.I.L.O then runs a test and reveals a shocking fact. Apparently, this Liz is just a clone of the original, as she has the real Elizabeth's personality and memories. She then records a message to Leo saying how she remembers a whole life that she actually didn't live, as she's just a few weeks old, and how she even remembers how they were trying to have kids and stuff. And as she was recording, she realizes that she's in a bit of a bind, as she's about to die of oxygen deprivation. M.I.L.O starts a countdown to euthanize her, but she manages to do the impossible and fix the pod, as the oxygen was almost at 0%. We then see her returning to hypersleep, and a sedative is administered to her body, and she's covered by a cocoon. And just before the movie ends, we see Leo and Elizabeth on the new planet, smiling and embracing one another. I hope you guys enjoyed the recap. Make sure to leave me a like, leave a comment, also subscribe to my channel. I love you guys so much, and I promise to see you on my next recap. Bye!